Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Public Podcast. I'm your host, Anne Berry, here with you today to gain insight into the world of satellite communications and the budding space economy. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our YouTube at Public Invest for in-depth conversations and interviews that help keep your portfolio on track. Today, I'm absolutely thrilled to welcome Dan Goldberg, President and Chief Executive Officer of Telesat, one of the largest global satellite operators. Telesat trades on the NASDAQ under the ticker symbol TSAT. Dan, thank you for joining us. And we were just chatting before we hit the go button that I'm particularly excited, with a little bit of background investing privately in the satellite space, to have you here, and just, the length of your perspective in the industry is a real treat to have you join us. So thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me here.
So Dan, just to set the framework for us, tell us a little bit, broad strokes, about the Telesat business model and your asset base and the services that you provide.
So we are one of the largest communication satellite operators in the world. We own a fleet of satellites that are in geostationary orbit.
Yeah.
So they're 36,000 kilometers above Earth. And it's kind of an infrastructure business. Our customers are direct-to-home satellite companies, ISPs, telcos, governments, increasingly cruise ship companies and airlines all over the world that use our satellites to transmit their traffic. That can be television signals, can be, internet traffic. That's what we do. We've been doing it for 54 years, one of the largest in the world. It's a good business.
It's a fascinating business, and the technology behind what you do at Telesat, Dan, is absolutely fascinating. One of the most innovative pieces of your business model has been the Lightspeed Network, a line that at least you've positioned as revolutionizing the global broadband connectivity landscape. Talk to us about that and the capabilities that you're bringing on stream there.
Yeah, so Lightspeed is our kind of next big play. I mentioned that all of our existing satellites are in a geostationary orbit. And those are great for distributing video content and some other applications. But for broadband connectivity, we all know that we want that super fast, affordable. It's got to be resilient. It's got to be secure for our customers. They want it ubiquitous. They want to be able to cover any point on Earth. And so what Telesat Lightspeed is all about, it's a constellation of low Earth orbit satellites, very advanced, very capable satellites. There's a constellation, and they talk to each other in space with optical lasers. So in your mind, you should envision like a space-based kind of mesh IP network. It's got terabits and terabits of very low latency, which means fast, high throughput, affordable capacity. It's very resilient. It's very secure. And we're focusing on the enterprise broadband market. And so if you allow me, what I'm talking about there is it's for mobile network operators, telephone companies, ISPs, particularly serving rural and remote markets where there isn't good fiber connectivity. It's for our customers. I mentioned the airlines and the cruise ships. They don't get to use fiber. They have to use satellite.
Sure.
But their connectivity demands are soaring right now as their customers, as their passengers want really good, affordable, high-performance broadband connectivity. And it's governments. So governments are using satellite networks for all sorts of applications. And so that's really the market that we're focused on. And we need to go low Earth orbit. We need to get the satellites closer to the Earth so that the signal is faster. The amount of time it takes for our customer signal to go from their ground station to our satellite and back down to the Earth again, because the satellites are so much closer to the Earth, we have speeds that are just like fiber, indistinguishable.
And to help complete the picture, Dan, you've done such a great job of laying out visually what this might look like. Give us a sense of scale. How many satellites are we talking about within the Lightspeed network?
Yeah, so we can provide a really capable global network with about 200 satellites So we're going to initially roll out, it's just the way the math works with these orbits, 156 satellites. We expect to have those in service and providing global connectivity to our customers by the end of 2027. We'll then scale that up to about 200. And then from there, we'll continue to scale it based on what the market requires from a demand perspective.
On August 11th, Dan, Telesat announced a deal with MDA to build the Lightspeed satellites. Stock's more than doubled since then. Walk us through that deal and why you think your investors have responded so positively to that contract news.
Yeah, so I mentioned we're a satellite operator. We own the space-based infrastructure and we provide a communication service to our customers, but we don't build the satellites. So we selected a couple of weeks ago, we announced MDA. I think it was the biggest contract in their history. It's about, they're a Canadian company like we are. It's about $1.7 billion Canadian dollar contract for MDA. They're a world-class satellite manufacturer. They have a leading cutting-edge advanced design for these satellites. The market loved it because it's very cost-effective, the work that MDA will be doing for us. I think the market understands that this constellation that we'll be bringing to market, revolutionary, very disruptive in terms of the value proposition that we're going to be bringing to our customers. And I think a lot of investors know that the market for global broadband connectivity for enterprise customers, government customers is massive. And it's growing very, very quickly. And this new constellation is going to put Telesat in a great position to address that market. So anyway, it was a good day.
I'm sure it was exciting. And again, the stock response has been, I'm sure, extremely exciting for your team. I'm going to pose the next question, Dan, in a slightly provocative fashion, because I can sense that you're good-humored about it. But the other CEO who has talked about launching a satellite fleet that is transformational, that is going to change broadband, has been Elon Musk. Talk us through, if you don't mind, the differences between what Telesat and SpaceX are doing.
Yeah, listen, we know SpaceX well. We've been a customer of SpaceX's over the years. Great company, very innovative, very entrepreneurial. They're launching their own low Earth orbit satellite constellation as well. But it's, as you mentioned, called Starlink, and it's out there. And I think in many ways, it's demonstrated just what a powerful piece of infrastructure these low Earth orbit satellite constellations can be. They're really disruptive, and they're filling a niche that the market needs. Now the niche that Starlink is particularly focused on, it's the consumer market. And so you or I could, order up a Starlink dish and, put it on our cottage or on our home somewhere. Our constellation, by contrast, really built for not so much consumer users, but for the market that we've been serving for the last 5+ decades. It's the enterprise market. It's those mobile network operators, ISPs, it's banks, it's energy companies. And for those types of users, they're a pretty demanding group of users. They want a committed information rate, not a best efforts broadband connection.
Right. Yep.
They want service level agreements. They want 99.9 something level of availability. And we've built our network to meet those very demanding requirements. I personally think Starlink is going to be very, very successful, but it's a very big market that we're all focused on. We've had a lot of success over our more than half-century history, and I'm convinced that with Lightspeed, we're going to continue to grow our business. We're going to grow our business by multiples with this new constellation, with this new capability. It's a huge move.
It's fascinating to hear you talk about the 50+ year history that you can see this from. And you've been at the helm of Telesat for 17 years. During your tenure, I'm sure that you've seen what, the layperson, like I have been reading, just more removed on more and more satellite communications businesses, often with the backing of sovereign wealth or governments all over the world, have been looking to try and get more satellites up into the sky, because each of those countries themselves want some of the things that you've talked about: safe, reliable, resilient, secure satellite communications. What is the outlook? How far away are we from, or is this too conceptual a question, from a world in which we have a very cluttered space? Where, I mean, is there a cap on the number of LEO satellites that we can actually have up there in the skies?
Well, I'd say a couple of things about that. One, you're right. Governments all over the world now are very much focused on space-based assets to help them advance, their kind of myriad public policy concerns. Some of that is providing broadband connectivity, particularly bridging the digital divide for their citizens living in rural and remote places. Some of it is national security. And we've seen in Ukraine just what a difference access to the Starlink constellation has had in terms of what's going on in that conflict. But in terms of how many players can be accommodated in space, I'd say quite a few. Space is immense.
Spacious.
It's spacious, and there are lots of different orbits. So I mentioned our current satellites are 36,000 kilometers in space. The Lightspeed constellation is going to be about 1,000 kilometers above Earth. SpaceX is down below us. They're at about 500, 600 kilometers, somewhere in that range. And these satellites oftentimes operate in different frequency bands. And so in addition to there being a lot of physical space so that we're not bumping into each other, literally, there's also a fair amount of spectrum that we can all use to provide these very vital and important services. It's not to say that it's not an issue, making sure that we make use of space, which is, a common resource, in a good, safe, responsible way. But if all of us do that, if we operate in a responsible way, if we're launching satellites that have redundancy and the ability to do maneuvers so that we avoid collisions, if we're sharing information with each other and with the regulators so that all of these objects in space can be tracked, then I think that there's a lot of room for a lot of participants to make sure that they can deliver the types of services that are so vital to deliver right now.
Okay, so Dan, let's talk about execution and actually bringing the Lightspeed network online. You expect it, in your comments, for it to be 2027 by the time it's fully operational, but several launches expected in mid-2026. Just take us through some of the key milestones that you and your team are looking at and investors should be watching too.
Oh, that's a great question. And I'd say, we think about these milestones sort of in two buckets. One is technical and operational. And a lot of that is working with MDA and some of our other key suppliers. So there'll be a preliminary design review. There'll be a critical design review. There'll be our first launch and then the subsequent launches. All of those events we'll be talking to the market about. So that's kind of on just hitting the objectives in terms of bringing this disruptive network to market. And then there's the commercial milestones. And a lot of that is announcing customer commitments to use the constellation.
And how far in advance do those come from launch, Dan? Just the lead time to get those customer contracts signed up to get on those transponders?
So listen, right now we already have about $500 million in revenue commitments from customers to use the constellation. That's kind of over a 10-year period. As we get closer to launch, the closer we get to launch, the more momentum we'll have in order to announce those things. We're out there already talking to all of our different customers and governments and other prospective users. So I think that between now and launch, you'll be hearing from us.
Taking a big step back, Dan, and you've got such a unique perspective to do this for us. If we look at the new space economy in Canada, How big do you think that market is? From your vantage point, you're a global business, but you are in Ottawa at this moment. How would you size the addressable market that you're playing in?
That's a great question. I mean, when we think about the addressable market, because we're a global player, we tend to think about the global market. So maybe I'll talk about that for a second. So we think by the time we're out in like 2025, when we're quite close to coming into service, the market that we're focused on, that enterprise market, about a $200 billion a year business. So a huge addressable market. And again, that's providing broadband connectivity for mobile network operators, ISPs, telcos, energy, aero, government. So a big, big market. How big is Canada, as a function of that? I don't know, maybe it's a kind of mid-single digit percent when you think about it. I mean, North America itself will be a very large market. Asia is growing very, very quickly. We're here in Canada, but most of our revenues and most of our customers are going to be outside of Canada.
And in terms of innovation, Dan, how much is government funding supporting innovation in the space? I'm reading a book at the moment that's talking about the impact that DARPA has had over time in US innovation. When you look at Canadian innovation and with your global clients, how much are you seeing government funding of new initiatives in space coming to the fore?
I can say in the space sector, governments historically and even today tend to be the big kind of early anchor customers and kind of the early seed investors. I mean, if you every player I know in this market, including SpaceX, NASA was a big early supporter of SpaceX, helping to underwrite the development of their rockets. Certainly for our constellation, Telesat Lightspeed, the government of Canada, fully recognizing the benefits of what these constellations can deliver, not just in terms of bridging the digital divide and helping to advance a lot of the national security objectives, but just the underlying IP development, the development of the intellectual property that's required to deploy a constellation like this, and all the exports that fuels subsequently. The government of Canada, I'd say, like the US government, like the Europeans, and then I look further, government of China, Russia, India, and the government of India just landed, a moon rover on the south pole of the moon.
Right, at very low cost.
At very low cost. And we ourselves have gotten a number of DARPA contracts because the US government's very interested in the work that we're doing. Governments play a key role in the development of these space-based initiatives, whether those are rockets or satellite constellations. They're big contributors.
Last question while I've got you, Dan, and that's about whether it's possible for a company like Telesat to diversify its growth. And I almost think of, in a strange way, I almost think of you like a real estate company where you've got, your asset, there's a certain amount of volume, at least today, that you can envision going through it. You've got price, which perhaps you can increase contractually over time. Are there other ways for you to grow your revenue base beyond the number of satellites you're launching into space?
Well, first off, I love your analogy. I often describe our business like a real estate business, the orbital, real estate and the spectrum. That's like getting a piece of land. The satellites are like building the building. And then just like a real estate developer, we got to fill up the satellites. And it's all about rate and utilization, just like if we were running a shopping mall or a hotel. Look, the way for us to grow our business is to, it's going to sound trite, but it's to bring to the market what our customers are demanding. And what our customers are demanding right now is high throughput, affordable, reliable, secure, fully global, ubiquitous broadband connectivity. And there aren't that many of us that are doing that. And there aren't that many of us that are equipped to do it in terms of the technological prowess that you need, the regulatory expertise you need, access to capital, the familiarity with the customer base. And so for us, if we do that right, we'll dramatically grow our revenue, our EBITDA, our cash flows. And I think we're on the track to do that right now, having announced Lightspeed. I think the market gets it. I think that's why our stock responded so favorably when we made that announcement. And I believe as we continue to make progress and continue to make more announcements that reinforce that we're executing well and are on the right path, I think we'll see more of that.
On that note, Dan Goldberg, President and CEO at Telesat, thank you so much for joining us today. And folks, that's it from us here at the Public Podcast. Join us next time.
Thank you, Anne.